We're in the middle of a pandemic that isn't going away anytime soon. And we've got to find a way to live with it whilst also asking some big questions about how we got here in the first place. And no, I'm not talking about COVID. I'm talking about mental health. Did you know that 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health problem of some kind this year? 1 in 5 of us have suicidal thoughts, and 1 in 15 attempt suicide. Mental health is a big deal, and it's a big problem in our world today. Now, I'm guessing you know of somebody who is struggling right now with anxiety, depression, or stress. And I'm also guessing that you often feel out of your depth because you're not sure what you can do to help, and you're not sure what you should or shouldn't say. If you're anything like me, you don't want to get it wrong, and you certainly don't want to make it worse. So you drift towards the side of not saying or doing anything. And it creates a paralysis where the person we care about isn't helped, and we're left confused and frustrated. So in this series, we're going to try to raise the profile around mental health. We're also going to give you some practical tools to help you identify and respond to some mental health issues, to equip you to be able to get over that initial hurdle of not knowing what to say or what to do. And we're also hosting a mental health first aid course that's accredited by Mental Health First Aid England. Check out fbcnext.com/firstaid to find out more and to book your slot. Now, first of all, if you're struggling with a mental health issue, we want to encourage you to do the same thing you would do if you were struggling with anything that made you feel unwell. Get help. Speaking to your GP is a great place to start. You can also check out the resources and information on the NHS website. Just stick mental health into the search bar on their homepage. Also, mind.org is a great website to visit to get more information and some help. Now, if we're going to talk about mental health, we first need to understand what we're talking about. There's so many definitions out there. Here's something from the World Health Organization. Mental health is defined as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community. So we all have mental health. There's a thing called the mental health continuum that shows we can range from having good mental health to poor mental health. There's a whole bunch of factors that determine where you are on this continuum. Our mental health is influenced by what we call risk factors. This is stuff like environment, traumatic events, substance use. It's also influenced by what is known as protective factors. So that's stuff like positive parenting, nutrition, and rest. We'll explore this a bit more in message 2 in this series. Now, we all move along this continuum. Right now, you are somewhere along this line. But there's another helpful axis to put in. This is about whether someone has a diagnosed mental health condition or not. Now, this one is more binary than the other. You either have a diagnosed condition or you don't. The point is that we move around this continuum. We have moments where we can feel unwell, but the good news is that recovery is not just possible, in most cases it's likely. In many ways, mental health is like physical health. We can become unwell, but we can get better. And some of us develop health conditions that we learn to live with. See, about 10 years ago, I developed a health condition that I will have to live with for the rest of my life. And it's a condition that is common in people who are young and extremely fit. It's gout. Now, I said that other bit because most people, when they hear that you've got gout, think of people like Henry VIII. It's thought of as a condition that's caused by overindulgence, not one that's caused by a kidney dysfunction, which admittedly can be exacerbated by overindulgence. Now, I've times where I've been in lots of pain with this, but I haven't had an attack for the last few years because it's being treated. Now, I don't normally go around publicising the fact that I have gout, largely because I don't want to have to deal with the silly comments that I get. There's a stigma that's associated with it. Now, if I feel this over my health condition, how much more do people who struggle with a mental health condition feel? The stigma associated with it often gets in the way of people finding the help and support they need. It's great that things are changing in this area. It's so encouraging to see that the message shifts so we know that it's okay to not be okay. But if you're honest with yourself, do you agree with that statement? Is it really okay to not be okay? Is it really okay to have a mental health condition? We still carry this stigma with us, and often it's a self-stigma that many people carry that gets in the way of them seeking the help that they need. It is okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay there. It's okay to have a broken leg, but it's not okay to keep walking around on it without getting the help or the treatment that it needs. So throughout this series, we want to raise the awareness of what we mean by mental health, whilst also identifying a few things that we can do to either help ourselves or to help the people around us. We also want to explore how faith intersects with this whole area of life. The stigma, and especially self-stigma associated with mental health, is not uncommon in churches. We can have a false belief that if we have faith and if we trust in God, then we shouldn't struggle with our mental health. Now, of course, that's not true. It's not true for catching a cold, and it's not true for dealing with anxiety or depression. Faith doesn't mean we don't have problems. Faith isn't the secret formula to get us out of our problems. In lots of ways, it's the opposite. Faith isn't found in not having a problem or not struggling. Faith is found in what we do in the midst of that struggle. So much of the Bible speaks into this. Just open the book of Psalms and have a read. Now, listen to these words that David wrote in Psalm 34. These words were inspired by a really challenging situation that David faced. Basically, everyone he met wanted to kill him, or at least that's how it felt like to David. This was definitely a risk factor for his mental health. This is what David says. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Now, David isn't talking about a relationship breakup. Brokenhearted here doesn't mean that he's just split up with his girlfriend. Hear the pain and the struggle in these words. Crushed in spirit. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever had those moments in life where you felt low, where you felt crushed on the inside? Have you had those times where you had lost hope, where you couldn't see the point in what was happening? Have you ever spoken to someone who felt like this? You look at them and you listen to them, and the only word you can use to describe them is crushed. They seem broken, full of despair and beyond hope. What do you do in those moments? What do you say? Now, what could you possibly offer that would make any difference? I often feel powerless and helpless in these moments. I don't know what I can do or what I can say that will help. And there lies part of the problem we have with mental health. Most of us want to help. We want to make a difference. We want to help people find a solution. We want to solve the problem. But what if one of the best things we could do is the same thing that God does? The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Proximity should be our priority. Of course, we want to help people climb out of the hole that they're in, but sometimes we first need to be willing to climb into it with them, to be close, to listen, and then to gently and patiently help them find their way out. In moments like this, understanding is overrated. I don't understand what it's like to live with an anxiety disorder that makes it difficult to do the things that most of us take for granted. I don't understand how depression can take such a hold that it makes it a battle just to get out of bed in the morning. The reason we can often struggle to understand what it's like to live with a mental health condition is because we start from where we are. We imagine how we would react in that situation or in those circumstances. But the starting point is very different. Often my quest for understanding doesn't help. It actually gets in the way. It doesn't help me, and it doesn't help the person that I'm trying to help. If I'm struggling, I don't need your understanding. I need your love. I need to know that I'm not alone, that I'm not stuck in this hole by myself. So next time, when you don't know what to say or what to do, don't worry. You might not need to say anything. Just be there in a way that they know you are there. Now, lots of the letters we find in the New Testament were written by a guy called Paul. Paul had his fair share of struggles. There were many risk factors at work that affected his mental health. Listen to these words that he shared with the church in Corinth. For when we came into Macedonia, we had no rest, but we were harassed at every turn, conflicts on the outside, fears within. But God, who comforts the downcast, comforted us by... Now, how do you think God comforted Paul? He's really up against it. It must feel like he's facing a wall everywhere he turns. This harassment and conflict resulted in an internal fear. Now, the things that Paul and his companions faced took their toll. It impacted them. And we could think that Paul shouldn't feel like this. After all, he's just doing what God has called him to do. Surely he shouldn't struggle. Surely he shouldn't have this inner fear because of these external factors. Doesn't Paul just need more faith? Well, no. He needs something else. So what does God do about it? How does he bring them comfort? But God, who comforts the downcast, comforted us by the coming of Titus. So what did Titus do that brought such comfort to Paul in this time of distress that it caused him to tell the church in Corinth about it? Well, he simply showed up. Proximity should be our priority. Titus didn't solve the problem. He didn't take away the opposition or the conflict. He just turned up. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just show up. Just be there and let them know that you're there. You don't have to fix a problem. That's not your job. You just need to be there and recognize that God can use you to be a source of comfort to someone who needs it. Proximity is our priority. But that doesn't mean all we can do is just be there. Now, understanding is overrated, but that doesn't mean that it isn't useful. Perhaps it's worth taking some time to find out a bit more about mental health, especially if 1 in 4 of us will experience a mental health problem this year. So that's why we're hosting this mental health first aid course that's accredited by Mental Health First Aid England. It's going to happen at the end of March. Check out fbcnext.com/firstaid for more information and to book your slot. And there is a cost for this course. It's not free. This cost is there to cover the materials and the instructor. Now, I've done a couple of these courses and I found them extremely helpful and beneficial. It really is worth the investment. So let's just look again at those words of David. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. God is close to us when we struggle, but he doesn't want to leave us there. He's at work to save us, to rescue us, to heal us. Now, this often happens in a way that is different to what we expect, but that doesn't mean that God isn't at work. Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God." Now, that's some inheritance for people who struggle. Something happens when we struggle. Something happens when we realize that we don't have it all together. We can start to see that we don't have to have it all together, that we don't have to be the solution to our struggles. Being poor in spirit helps us see our need for help. We all need help some of the time, if not all of the time. The beauty in pain and brokenness is that it can help push you towards Jesus, to become aware of your need for him, your dependence on him. It helps you see that you are not enough and that you were never designed to be enough. But he is. Struggling with mental health is not a sign that you're failing, it's a sign that you're living. What you do with it is important. Seeking the help you need is important. In the midst of the struggle, you can experience a closeness to God that, for whatever reason, can't be found when life is plain sailing. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. The Lord is close to those who struggle, to those who feel crushed, overwhelmed, broken. The Lord is close to those who don't have it all together, who feel anxious, stressed, or depressed. The Lord is close and he's at work. It's okay to not be okay. But God doesn't want to leave you there.